Looking for financial insights you can trust?
How do you protect yourself as an investor? What's the strategy?
I think it's really simple. I think you just want to be diversified in your portfolio.
The Payne family brings real-world experience to every conversation.
Well, I think that's the problem right now is, right, a lot of people that are close to retirement, they're taking so much risks. And if we do get a big sell-off, it could derail their retirement.
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show. It is Super Bowl Sunday. I must tell you, I don't know much about football. I know that Richard Nixon liked the Miami Dolphins, and then later, of course, the Redskins, calling in a play to the coach, losing in a game that the team lost. And I know that Jack Kemp belongs in the Football Hall of Fame. He's a two-time AFL championship winner. He was also the head of the Players Union. He was a great advocate for civil rights. In all honesty, I think he should be posthumously given the Medal of Freedom. That's how much I respect Jack Kemp. In 1988, many people resisted the idea that Vice President George Bush was the logical heir to Reagan when his natural heir was Kemp. What Kemp and Reagan had in common was their embrace of pro-growth economics. Reagan, like Kennedy, knew that tax cuts increased revenues. Tax cuts don't cause deficits. And, of course, Kemp was the champion of supply-side economics, along with giants like Larry Kudlow and many, many others. But I think that if you watch what's going on in America, this attack on Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, about a so-called whistleblower filed complaint against her, allegedly wrongdoing, so sensitive, its details supposedly cannot be disclosed to the public. The complaint was reviewed and closed because it lacked credibility. Now, enter the Wall Street Journal. In a breathless piece published this week, the Wall Street Journal reports on the existence of this, quote, sensitive complaint, while strongly implying this classification alone somehow suggests guilt. The Wall Street Journal never establishes that Gabbard did nothing wrong. It does not even claim to know what she supposedly did. You see, they manufacture these things. So in this particular case, two foreign intelligence officers, neither of them working for the United States, overheard or were monitored in a conversation with the whistleblower. It's the same classic thing. So the Vindman brothers is the classic example. Alex and Eugene. Eugene's now a congressman. Alex and Eugene basically claimed that they overheard a phone conversation, and in that phone conversation, Donald Trump asked questions of the President Zelensky about Biden, and no one disputes that. But they decided to make that corrupt when, in fact, it was defensive. Joe Biden went out and told the world that he held up $1 billion to Ukraine unless they fired the prosecutor who was looking into Burisma and his son. So this is a well-worn thing here, and they keep doing it, and then they expect that whistleblower complaint, which is entirely manufactured, to be credible, which of course it isn't. The scoop is simply that a classified complaint exists, you see. The Wall Street Journal, once again, never establishes there's no scandal here. What exists instead is a familiar and well-worn playbook where they recycle the same garbage. It is just the fact that it is classified that I think makes it stand out. Hans Manch, who writes for The Federalist, is a very smart guy. He writes correctly, the real story is not the supposed scandal. It's the relentless recycling of the same hoax playbook and the media's grotesque complicity. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, is under attack. A so-called whistleblower filed a complaint against her, alleging wrongdoing so sensitive that its details supposedly could not be disclosed. The complaint was reviewed and closed because it lacked credibility. The determination was made by Tamara Johnson, a career official who works as the acting inspector general of the intelligence community during the Biden administration. That should have been the end of the story. Enter the Wall Street Journal, as I say. In a breathless piece, they make this a story. In other words, the fact that there was a claim that there was no evidence of truth to find doesn't matter to them. To heighten the drama, the article likens the episode to a John Le Carre novel. At that point, their whole piece in the Wall Street Journal collapses into accidental self-parody. You see, in Le Carre's most famous and definitive work, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, the entire plot revolves around a compromised source feeding supposedly ultra-sensitive intelligence into the system, sending a British intelligence, among others, on a manhunt for a throat that does not exist. The secrecy is not proof of the truth. It is the mechanism of deception. The sensitive intelligence is the hoax. So yes, the comparison here is apt. It is very much like what the Vindman brothers did when they invented the impeachment charge against Donald Trump. And of course, they leaked this conversation to Eric C.R. Mella, I think I've said that correctly, who worked for as a staffer at that point for Senator Adam Schiff. He is the whistleblower. Now, Schiff tried to tell us that he never spoke to the whistleblower. He stopped saying that after that was disproved and became very clear that he was actually the manufacturer of that entire hoax. What you have going on here is very much the same. The mechanics are simple. They've been deployed repeatedly over the last decade. First, make an allegation against a political target. The allegation does not need to be supported by evidence. It doesn't even need to be coherent. Second, wrap the allegation in extreme classification, make it quote-unquote super secret, bury it in a restricted annex or otherwise render it inaccessible to the American people. Thirdly, leak the existence of the allegation which you fabricated and let the secrecy do the work. You see, this is the deep state hustle. The absence of detail generates intrigue. Classification becomes a proxy for gravity, and that gravity is presented as proof. Hans Mauch is a great writer. This is exactly what the CIA Director John Brennan, James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence at the time, and FBI Director James Comey did with the Obama-ordered intelligence community assessment. That was manufactured. John Brennan stuffed the Steele dossier into that, tried to hide it in the footnotes, but he failed. It was placed in the document, even though they knew that it had been fabricated. At that point, they probably knew that the guys at Fusion GPS, the infamous research operation that created the Steele dossiers, which was essentially a set of claims that Donald Trump, while a private businessman and visiting Paris, had partied in a hotel room with a bunch of French prostitutes, and he observed them urinating on a bed that Barack Obama had once slept in. It is a complete and total fiction. And they knew it was a fiction. It's ironic that Andrew Weissman, who is the de facto head of the Mueller investigation, because the Mueller investigation is based on that same Steele dossier claim. James Comey says later, we had a rich mosaic of evidence, but in the end he couldn't point to anything but this, and this was created. It is a hoax, and thanks to Tulsi Gabbard, they are busted. That's why they are trying to smear her in this way. In other words, she declassified all of the crucial documents that show you that there was a seditious conspiracy that began in 2016 in a White House meeting chaired by the President of the United States, Barack Obama. Joe Biden was there. Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor, was there. CIA Director John Brennan was there. FBI Director James Comey was there. along with other lawyers and lackeys. And it continues through the post-election effort to delegitimize Trump's presidency with their totally manufactured Russian collusion hoax, which the American people had to suffer through for 3 years. Trump had to deal with painful headlines, fraudulent charges, and millions of dollars of investigations into something that wasn't really happening. And even Robert Mueller could not, at the end of the day, say that he had found evidence of Russian collusion. The claim by some of his acolytes, like Andrew Weissman, that Paul Manafort shared Trump campaign polling with a Russian intelligence agent is completely and totally false. The gentleman they're talking about, Konstantin Kilimnik, is actually a U.S. intelligence asset, as can be proven in the declassification of a number of the cables between our embassy and our State Department at that time. So once again, these people will manufacture any fraud. And the fact that Tulsi Gabbard was present for the raid on the Fulton County warehouse when the FBI swooped in to seize the records from the 2020 presidential election, as all America knows, the Democrats went crazy. What is she doing there? That was Tim Kaine. Remember him? He ran for vice president with Hillary. Why is she there? This is political. No, actually, it is well within her scope of responsibility to protect the security of American elections, because it's part of our overall security. They really fear her because she's a star, and they know it. Through this whole thing, she has been sure-footed. She has been determined. She's been given very, very tight parameters by the president. The president wants proof. He doesn't want conjecture. He doesn't want evidence. He wants a conclusion, and she has measured it up. She's an extraordinary person, a 4-term Democrat congresswoman from Hawaii, in the Hawaii state legislature at a very young age, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, and a combat veteran in the Afghanistan conflict. I'm Roger Stone. We'll talk about Tulsi Gabbard a bit more on the other side, and we'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So you remember the two twin brothers in the U.S. Army, Alexander Vindman and his brother Eugene. Eugene is now serving in Congress, and Alexander Vindman is running for the U.S. Senate in very red Florida. Why he would expose himself, because his lies will catch up with him. Once again, he and his brother fabricate the intent of Trump's call with Zelensky. But afterwards, they pitched the Ukrainian government for a $12 million contract to build something called the Ukrainian Weapons Systems Sustainment Center. We know for certain that they were paid $200,000. That is reported as required by law. But the larger proposal to Ukraine shows you how this works. The $200,000 shows you how this works. They use the same playbook over and over again. Now they're using it on Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is not a random official caught in bureaucratic crossfire. She's one of the very few senior figures in this administration who has actively pursued accountability against the institutions that manufactured the Russian collusion hoax and the other hoaxes. It's no coincidence the Wall Street Journal's attack arrives just days after Gabbard was president, the FBI raid. She was seen not out front, but somebody caught a glimpse of her. She was standing in the shadows talking on her cell phone in the photo. But at the president's direction, she's now a serious threat to them, because in addition to declassifying everything pertaining to Russia, the president has charged Tulsi Gabbard with election integrity. Now, I want to correct one thing. I did say in an interview with Eric Metaxa that Tulsi Gabbard had proof of foreign manipulation of voting machines. And I misspoke. What I said was that she has proof that the capability exists, that they can switch the numbers through proven channels. But that doesn't mean that the evidence that they did it in 2020 is still around. If you were pulling off the greatest hoax of all time, which is electing a guy president who's wearing a diaper and has trouble getting out of his basement, and expect us to believe he got 81 million votes. He did 20% better in the African American community. Joe Biden, the man who said, if you desegregate the Wilmington public schools, it will be a racial jungle. A man who was very close to KKK Klansman Robert Byrd, and of course that generation's Strom Thurmond. Strom Thurmond had been kind of a hardcore old-time segregationist, crucial to Nixon's comeback, and he survived it because of his great reverence for the military. This is their playbook. They do it again and again. I think we established that the Fulton County attorney did not deny in sworn testimony before the Georgia State Elections Board that some 315,000 votes had been counted in early voting that had no signatures or proper codes on them. So when Trump is on the phone with the Secretary of State, Raffensperger, he's not going to find 11,000 votes. If you listen to the entire transcript, or read the entire transcript, or listen to the entire recording, he tells them that they have already miscounted 330,000 roughly votes, and that is greater than the margin of 11,000 that they're trying to count him out on. You have to listen to the entire thing. But the Democrats went out of their minds when Tulsi Gabbard showed up, and they're now afraid that she's digging into the machines, she's digging into the paper ballots. That's the charge the president has given her. The Democrats and their media allies don't want a proven fighter with this kind of authority anywhere near investigations into their own conduct. Gabbard's work is the opposite of performative. That dedication has unsurprisingly earned her powerful enemies. Now she faces these attacks largely on her own. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show right here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Don't go away on
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So on the break, I was talking to the guys who run this show, and I see one of the great things about being the host of the Roger Stone Show is I get to choose the music. Then Red Apple goes and licenses our use of it, which is not a lot of money, but not a little money. So you get to choose your own music. And I suggested that we pick up something by Cab Calloway. Cab Calloway's Minnie the Moocher was the first record to sell 1 million copies for any black man. So Cab Calloway, the legendary orchestra frontman, dancer, performer, singer, most of whose great songs are about reefer in Harlem, was one of the great entertainers of all time. He was also the first African American to appear in a movie. He was in The Singing Kid, and he performs in the movie at a movie starring Al Jolson. Jolson was not a great actor. He was very wooden, but he could always kind of fall back on the singing. But I like seeing others call this out. Joe Kent, distinguished veteran who works as a deputy to Tulsi Gabbard, a very able fellow, writes that like Russiagate and the impeachment hoaxes, this attack on DNI Gabbard follows the same pattern. The non-intel presented as intel leaked then to Democrats in Congress, Mark Warner of Virginia, and the media by a Democrat operative lawyer to set the narrative. It's there, and they're after because she's effectively fighting the deep state. I think everyone recognizes that this thing is a confection. Mark Warner is proven to have coordinated now with Christopher Steele. So he is coordinating the landing of the Steele dossier in text messages that have been obtained. So he there is both breaking the law, and he is not disclosing any of that. This guy pumped up the Senate Intelligence Committee report on the Russian collusion. Richard Burr was a Trump-hating rhino, was the actual chairman of the committee. He just gave Warner his head, and Warner produces an extraordinary document because I think every word in it is false. I do know this, that I'm in there like 8 or 9 times, and every one of those bits have been completely and totally incinerated. And when you ask them, what is your source for this information? Where are the documents? They basically say, oh, it was in the Huffington Post. Therefore, it's true. This was the most pasted together garbage. Everything was being fed by various Russian operators against Trump. But basically, he knows that John Brennan and James Comey and James Clapper and Andrew McCabe have cooked this up, with John Brennan playing the leading role without any question. My good friend Ian Trottier has written an incredible book on this called High Stakes Treason, because basically he not only exposes how Brennan betrayed his country, but also how he lined his pockets with federal dollars while he was doing it. It's an extraordinary book. I recommend it highly. High Stakes Treason. How John Brennan compromised American security for millions. It's an extraordinary book. Then a man who was an admitted communist said he supported, under oath, he said he supported Gus Hall for president. He voted for another Communist Party candidate for president. A man who there's significant evidence that during his time as the CIA station chief in Riyadh, where he, without any question, signed the visas for 19 individuals involved in the attacks on 9/11, but more precisely, 4 of the actual hijackers have their visas specifically approved by Brennan. This is a guy who got caught spying on a U.S. Senate committee that was rightfully investigating his illegal use of torture. He is really the ringleader here. You see, he grabs the Steele dossier, the one that Mark Warner helped steal, the former British intelligence agent, kind of hoist on the American people. The guys who produced this, they sold it first to Marco Rubio. I think Paul Singer, one of Rubio's patrons and financial supporters, who owns the Free Beacon, I think he paid for the original underlying research. And then the folks at GPS Fusion, those are the people that Robert Mueller said he'd never heard of when he was asked about them in his House testimony. They, I think, repackaged it and resold it to Hillary. We know they did. Hillary disguised the payment to them as legal fees, and she paid an enormous fine for it. So there is your real Russian collusion. These folks never really stop. It is amazing that they continue to move this stuff. In the meantime, they have what they call fake news. Trump's always talking about fake news. And there's a local reporter by the name of Dan Christensen. I actually respect some of his investigative reporting about the epic corruption in the Broward County Sheriff's Office, and the very real proof that he's produced that the sheriff of, I think, Florida's largest county lied on his state applications about a case in which he had been charged both with murder and with drug dealing. He never disclosed that. That is, I think, commonly known. But he went to trial and he was acquitted. But Christensen's work with credibility, I think, points to the fact that may have been manipulated. But now he is claiming in a new piece that I was hired by Roger Ver, also known as Bitcoin Jesus, one of the true founders of the cryptocurrency revolution and Bitcoin, without any regard to the facts. First of all, Roger Ver gave up his American citizenship. At the time he did, he paid some taxes. This was a tax dispute, but I was never paid as the chief principal pardon lobbyist. I was hired to recommend some lawyers. I did recommend two lawyers, Chris Kise and Jeff Neiman. Chris Kise is a former state attorney, worked with Florida state attorney, and Neiman is a former DOJ and IRS tax guy. Very, very able lawyers. But they point to the fact that I was hired to argue that Ver at some point decided that they were just going to continue to prosecute him, so he gave up his citizenship. When you do that, you pay a tax as a calculation of the tax. Ver got a tax attorney to give him their formula. They produced the number. It was done in a formal opinion. And because all of his holdings were in crypto, they were very hard to evaluate. But if he owed more tax, why wouldn't they just say, okay, you owe us this, your calculation was wrong. Instead, they tried to charge him criminally. So they hired me specifically to lobby the Congress regarding the laws that have to do with expatriation, because they're very unfairly constructed, proving that this is precisely what happened to Ver. I had one payment, and according to Dan Christensen, I filed all my federal lobbying paperwork for the fourth quarter 2025, stating that Ver had terminated him and my firm. That is correct, because the case was settled. My job was to lobby the Congress and also to give them internal advice, but I never spoke to anyone in the executive branch, including Donald Trump or anyone who works for him, about the case. That's not what I was hired to do. They had to prove their case legally. I turned that over to the lawyers. But the idea that I was terminated is absurd. They did use a number of other voices in Trump world. Brian Ballard, the founder of a huge lobbying firm, Ballard and Partners. I think they have kissed and made up with Donald Trump after early on, I think, kind of getting caught secretly raising money for Ron DeSantis. But they were called in to help Chris Kise, who was the chief lawyer for them. Kise is a very able guy. So, again, this is the same reporter who said that Roger and Nydia Stone had evaded $2 million worth of 2006 unpaid taxes, 75% of which are penalties and interest. They don't never tell you that part. He also alleged that I raised money through Stop the Steal in 2016, which was originally set up to do exit polling. I feared that the machines could be tampered with, so I wanted to do fully legal exit polls, just like the networks do. And the Democrats sued me, saying it was election interference. But I kept pointing out, if you're talking to voters only after they voted, how are you interfering in any way with their voting? It made no sense. And 5 different circuits, the Democrats filed it in 5 different states and a federal suit. They lost in all 5 state Supreme Courts, and the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear their claim. And that is the fact. This is the same kind of playbook. I was really happy to see Tony Shaffer. I like Tony Shaffer, very smart guy. Tony Shaffer served the country with distinction. He is a U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel. He was an intelligence officer. He's a very smart guy. Got to get him back here on the Roger Stone Show. 30 years in Army intelligence, specialized in counterterrorism, strategic intelligence, and operational analysis. served in senior advisory and intelligence roles supporting national-level security missions. He is the guy who ran the Able Danger Intelligence Program, which states al-Qaeda operatives prior to 9/11. He looked at this manufactured hoax against Tulsi Gabbard, and he says online, where he has a very lively, you can find him at Chi Spooky, that's Tony Schaefer. Exactly, he says, it's all complete BS and fiction. As a real whistleblower who had to report wrongdoing and failures by the intelligence community to Congress, this pattern is not realistic. This is exactly as Joe Kent, who I quoted earlier, said it is, another Russian collusion hoax invented to try to stop Tulsi Gabbard's work. So Tony Schaefer completely calls it out. Look, I've already said right here on the Roger Stone Show, as well as on the Stone Zone, that I think Tulsi Gabbard is going to be our first woman president. That doesn't mean in 2028, but someday, perhaps earlier rather than later. No one can ever tell. In politics, a day is a lifetime. That's why these morons who run around saying the 2026 election, the Republicans will definitely lose the House and might lose the Senate. They're panicans. They don't understand how incredibly volatile our politics is, and they don't understand the changes that mass communication has brought to the system. Everybody sees what happens in Butler, Pennsylvania, and the world is a very different place only minutes later. So Trump has laid the groundwork here for a very powerful economy. By election day of next year, it is already cooking. It's only going to get hotter. Once we get a interest rate cut from the Federal Reserve Board, where they're resisting President Trump's nominee, Kevin Warsh, who my friends Larry Kudlow and others think highly of. It is amazing they keep coming back to this same exact playbook. Tulsi Gabbard I think she brings you Democrats. I think she brings you millennials. She's very athletic. She's a crack shot. And as I say, she served in combat, and she looks great in fatigues. But she's very sure-footed. She ran for president once, and that is a huge benefit. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show, and we'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back on the Roger Stone Show. I have one of my favorite guests, one of the smartest guys I know, Barry Habib, is not only a member of the Fannie Mae Board of Directors, Fannie Mae being the government-owned government-backed mortgage company, but he's also the CEO of MBS Highway. He's an entrepreneur himself, but he is more precisely an astute student of mortgages, the housing market, and the Federal Reserve. He has written an amazing best-selling book, his book, Money in the Streets. He is widely credited as the guy who saved the mortgage industry in 2020 from margin calls due to actions by the Fed. It was his presentation to the Fed Board of Governors that created stability at a critical time. So he's actually changed the direction of the country. He joins us today to talk about what is swiftly becoming the number 2 domestic concern. When you used to ask in polls, by what do you measure the economic health of your family, they would say grocery prices, gas prices, and then crime would clock in as a concern, and it was fourth. Now the availability and affordability of housing has kind of soared into the second spot. So grocery prices are down, but they're not down as low as they're going to go. And that's just good. They're not down even to the level of Donald Trump's last year as president. But these policies will drive it there. And, of course, we have billions in new revenues from his tariff policies. Barry Habib has been a strong supporter of the president in all of those actions and joins us now.
What a pleasure to be here with you, Roger.
So, Barry, congratulations on your appointment. Bill Pulte, who is the scion of the Pulte Holmes family, a very dynamic bulldog of a human being. But a man who knows the housing market, a man who knows mortgages, a man who knows the housing industry, and a pit bull for accountability by public officials regarding their mortgages. Letitia James very clearly has prosecuted people for the exact same crime that the documents demonstrate that she committed. He referred those to the Justice Department, which is the proper action for the man of his responsibility. They have fraud investigators at the Federal Housing and Finance Agency. But Bill, I think, wisely selected Barry for this board. So, Barry, tell us about housing and mortgages in America. We've got 2 minutes, and then we'll pick it up on the other side.
So the housing market, people are saying that it is certainly less affordable than it had been. Now, part of that is because home values have gone up. But remember, 2/3 of Americans own homes, so they're not complaining about that for sure. It also creates a lot of equity, a lot of wealth. 2/3 of all net worth in the United States comes from home equity. So that's not a bad thing. But if you're trying to buy a home, it makes it a little bit more difficult, clearly. You compound that with higher interest rates, and higher interest rates have a lot of components to them. One of them is the inflation. You mentioned prices at the grocery store. The rate of inflation, that's the rate of change. It has come down. But what people are still feeling at the grocery store is the inflation that we had from 2021, 2022, and the Fed's culpability in keeping rates too low, too long, which that doesn't go away. You still feel that. The rate of change has moderated dramatically below what you're earning, so you're catching up.
Is it not true, however, is it not true? At this point, though, under Donald Trump, mortgage rates are stable, and they're actually hovering near their lowest levels in several years, generally in the mid to low 6% range for the most common 30-year fixed product. So these are the lowest mortgage rates we have seen. You see it being reported. Freddie Mac's primary mortgage market survey showed 30-year fixed-rate mortgages at 6.11%, a slight increase from the prior week, down a little bit. 15-year fixed mortgage rates at 5.50. I mean, these are the Trump policies. They are bringing stability.
How about this, Roger? They're more than 1% lower than what they were just a year ago. So there's your proof.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk to Barry Habib about where the economy is going to go. He appears today as a private citizen, not in his role as a Fannie Mae board member. So he speaks only of his own opinions, and he wanted me to make that clear, and I'm honored to do so. He's one of the smartest guys I know, and he's every economic downturn or uptick in the country.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. We rejoin our guest, Barry Habib. He is the smartest guy I know when it comes to the economy generally. He, Larry Kudlow, Steve Moore, a handful of others that I truly respect in this area, the growth side thinkers. Barry Habib was the one who pointed out to me when the president said publicly that he was considering unlocking the value in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and somehow taking them public, reaping a huge amount of money for the American people. Because let's face it, the government should not be in the mortgage business. They're currently both under conservatorship. And there's debate about whether they'd remain under conservatorship or be removed. I think Secretary Bessent, Bill Pulte, and anyone else who knows will tell you the president has not yet made those decisions. He sees a way to unlock the value. But it was Barry Habib who pointed out to me that you had to keep the guarantees in place, that whatever the president's plan was, it had to keep the guarantees in place. And then several days later, Donald Trump himself tweeted saying he hadn't yet decided what to do about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, but if he decided to reform them, he would at all times continue the guarantee of all those mortgages. So, Barry, I learn something every day, and I learn something every time I talk to you.
Well, it's very kind of you, Roger. So, listen, I just want to kind of put this together just for a couple of minutes here. I think it'll all make sense. So let's talk about the housing market in general. I think it's in good shape. That's, of course, different markets have different different demand and supply components that go into it. But overall, the housing market is in pretty good shape. Would we like it to be more affordable? Yes, but we don't want to hurt values. That's why the president's been brilliant, along with Director Pulte, in many initiatives that they're putting out there, that they have a deep desire, and they're using a lot of creativity. Now, is every idea going to work? Of course not, but you have to admire their transparency and the braveness to put things out there.
In the New Deal, Barry, Franklin Roosevelt tried several things in the New Deal the courts knocked down. They were particularly good ideas, but so you're right. Not every idea flies when you're the president of the United States.
Yeah, but sometimes it spurs other ideas. So his idea for the purchase of mortgage-backed securities by Fannie and Freddie of $200 billion is absolutely brilliant, and it is already starting to help. Now, what we have to think about is that we want to make housing more affordable. We don't want to hurt the 2/3 of the nation and see values go down. So we are seeing this, but what we need some additional help. Now, Scott Bessent has been very, very helpful and creative. If we get this bank deregulation deal to pass, that would greatly increase the incentive for banks to buy and absorb treasuries. That would help long-term rates probably by about 30 or 40 basis points. Now, we also should see inflation continue to come down, as I've explained to you. However, unfortunately, because the BLS methodology, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that measures these things, they use the same methodology. Get this, Roger, and you know this since 1985. They have not changed it. All the new methods we have, the government is still using methods from 1985. It's time for them to change this, Roger.
Yeah, the other view, Barry, is that they always come up with their big numbers, the unemployment numbers, the jobs numbers, whatever it is, and they always get the big headline with the huge number, and then they quietly backtrack and say, well, it wasn't really that high, it was actually substantially lower. They've done this again. They restate their finances. It's outrageous.
It is not right. But specific now for a moment to inflation. They're telling us, and the problem with this is the Federal Reserve is keeping rates too high because they're taking this at face value, many of them, not some of our Fed members who are much wiser than most. And thank goodness for our new incoming Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, who's an excellent choice. I really applaud that.
I think it's a ruse. He's not concerned about inflation. He's concerned about giving Donald Trump a shot in the arm. Look, I learned this from you. You're supposed to, the Fed governors are supposed to take into consideration the inflation numbers and the unemployment numbers. When Powell cut rates for Joe Biden, they were either lower than or at the same level as Trump's rates, which means we should have had a much deeper interest rate cut by now. So it's Powell who's acting politically. It's not Trump. Powell has politicized the traditionally, supposedly, non-political Federal Reserve. And Trump, because Trump is a builder, the idea of the renovations of this palatial palace that Powell was building for the Fed, a $3.1 billion remake. Trump went down and looked at the steel and said, couldn't you possibly use all this steel? Because Trump is a builder. Right. And that is the great strength, I think, of Trump understanding housing. He's a builder. He understands mortgages. He understands housing because he and his father built it.
Well, you're right. The Eccles building fiasco, that's a whole other issue. But I want to get back to inflation because it ties in, is that inflation is overstated right now. And specifically, when you take a look at two things we've talked about, they look at shelter, which makes up 18% of the core personal consumption expenditure number they look at, and it makes up 44% of the consumer price index. It shows that we are seeing that go up at 3.3% a year based on the 1985 methodology. But in today's numbers, it's only going up at 1% a year. Why is that so important? Because inflation really isn't at 2.8%. It's much lower. They also don't understand tariffs. Tariffs, once they're instituted, it's a one-time deal. Inflation's kind of a step ladder that goes up every year, but tariffs are like one step and then it stops. Over the summer, that will dissipate. You will stop seeing the impact from that. You will also hopefully see the shelter numbers come down. What we need to see is lower rates right now from the Fed, which will translate to helping affordability, helping mortgage rates, and helping housing. All this ties together, but as you perfectly said, Jerome Powell politicizing this, not allowing the government to run, terrified of things that are not even correct because he's looking at the wrong methodologies. Jerome Powell was completely culpable by keeping rates too low for too long when the evidence looking forward was there, but he was looking at backwards numbers.
And he's not an economist, he's a lawyer. That's the most amazing thing. He's not an economist, he's a lawyer.
Not a trained economist, he is an attorney. Why he would be in that position, I'm not sure. However, that's where he is. President Trump inherited him. Yes, he did reappoint him, but he did not initially appoint him.
The Fed is acting very politically. The Fed governor, you have to comment on this, but the Fed governor, Lisa Cook, was rightfully fired from that position by the president, who has the authority under the law to fire a Fed governor for misconduct. This certainly is misconduct. She sues the government, and the D.C. clerk of the courts assigns the case in the Washington, D.C. Civil Court to an African-American sorority sister of hers who was appointed to the bench by Joe Biden. A clear conflict of interest. The local court found for Cook. Trump is now appealing that. Most good lawyers I know tell me that they think that she will ultimately lose on appeal, that Trump indeed has the power to fire her, but she still sits in the seat until then because of the order of the court. So it is outrageous because I think we all understand nothing would help the mortgage rate better than a cut in interest rates, a fair cut in interest rates. We haven't had that.
Yes, we do need interest rates should be approximately 0.75% lower than where they are on the Fed funds rate. That would translate to mortgage rates being about 0.3 to 0.5% lower in mortgage rates. In addition to that, as inflation declines, and if Scott Bessent is successful in passing the Bank Deregulation Act, there's no reason you shouldn't have mortgage rates in the 5.75% range as opposed to the 6.25% range that they are now. And that would spur a lot of buying. It would make housing much more affordable. This is exactly what we need to happen in order to get things going. Remember, there's a lot of people that would like to move up, but they were fortunate enough to have mortgage rates in the 3% range. Now, maybe going from 3 to 6 might be a little bit of a stretch, but 3 to 5 might be something that can happen. You know, it should not be overlooked that also wages have been improving. We're seeing wage increases in the range of 4.5% to 6.5%. This is important to point out, Roger, because with inflation truly, really being right now less than 2%, people's standard of living is improving. Under Joe Biden, it was the opposite. Inflation was at 9%. And wages were not keeping up. We had negative wage growth, which means the standard of living, the misery factor under Joe Biden was increasing, while under Donald Trump it's improving.
So, Barry, there are several emails here. Ask Barry, what's going on with crypto, Bitcoin, and gold right now? What's going on?
Well, Roger, as you know...
Kind of a 2-minute curveball I just tossed you.
You got it. Okay, so as you know, we've been very bullish on gold, and we've been rewarded up 73% year over year. I've also mentioned on your show silver, and that was up. Now, in the very beginning, on January 26th to be exact, I missed it by 2 days. I suggested trimming holdings on both. I personally, full disclosure, trimmed 80% of my silver, 25% of my gold. I missed the peak by 2 days, but I'm feeling really, really good about that. I think ultimately gold will rebound and continue higher into upper levels. It is important because it is being purchased by sovereign nations as a hedge against fiat currency because Bitcoin is too volatile. Now, Bitcoin is going through its normal situation that it tends to go through during these cycles. If you go by the halving cycles, Bitcoin tends to do this. It could be in for some steep declines. Watch levels at around 60,000, 58,000. Those levels of support, in my opinion, have a reasonably good level of holding, and then we could see a move higher. I'm not so sure if we break beneath that How much lower it could go, we'll have to look at it, but it could dip into the below 50,000 range. But not to panic. Over time, these buying opportunities come back and they tend to come around. If you're trading it, I wouldn't jump in here just yet. Wait for those lows to be tested. If you're holding it long term, it'll probably come back around. There's a lot of people the last halving in the last cycle when it got down to 19, 17,000 in that range where they panicked and they sold, only to watch it go up to 126,000 a couple of years later. So, this is a very volatile asset. It's not for the faint of heart. And if you hold on to it long term, you'll probably be okay. But gold, I really like. Silver, let's let it test some lower levels and see it stabilize before jumping back into silver.
All right, there you go. Barry Habib, from his mouth to your ears if you're a smart investor. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Ken Kachighian is one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to politics. I mean, he already goes down in history as one of the greatest presidential speechwriters, but he's not merely a scribe, as Nick Ruby used to call all of those who wrote for the old man. He's also a strategic thinker. He was crucial in the rise of George Deukmejian to become governor and sit in the seat once occupied by the great Ronald Reagan. He sees the big picture, and of course, he has written. He's worked with both presidents to produce some of the most historic speeches in our history. His book, Behind Closed Doors, In the Room with Reagan and Nixon, is White House History Revealed. I mean, Ken was there in the post-presidential years with President Richard Nixon, or the old man as we called him behind his back, and he joined the entourage to help bring in Ronald Reagan for a landing in the epic 1980 defeat of Jimmy Carter. Many people misremember that race as Reagan winning by a landslide. He came from behind to win that race. Ken was part of that team. Ken, welcome once again to the Roger Stone Show. Okay, I jumped into the wrong segment here. All right, he's going to join us. I apologize. In any event, this book is really extraordinary. He is, he brings the readers behind the scenes. You're in the Oval Office, you're on Air Force One, you're in Camp David, you're in the Western White House, because Kachighian was keeping a diary, secret memos, and contemporaneous notes to share what he saw. And of course, he saw the rise of Reagan. Reagan is really being reassessed now in our history, and it is about time. The academics on the left have sought to denigrate his presidency, but in retrospect, Reagan is looking better and better. It was only because of Ronald Reagan and his bet that the Russians could not keep up with us economically with his defense build-up that the Iron Curtain fell, although it fell during George H.W. Bush. The Reagan movie biopicture was actually quite good. I thought it was quite accurate as well, and I highly recommend it. No, tax cuts don't cause deficits. In fact, revenues went up every year after Reagan's legendary 3-year tax cut, 10, 10, and 10. This was engineered by Jack Kemp and Senator Bill Roth of Delaware, and a host of others, including Larry Kudlow and many others, who really wanted to see Reagan move into the supply side camp and basically turn away from the austerity that established Republicans were trying to sell to voters. Growth, a rising tide, as JFK said, raises all boats. And generally speaking, every time we have cut taxes federally, federal revenues have gone up, not down. So one of the great fallacies of the left, they try to create this fiction that somehow cutting taxes on the hardworking American people has caused these deficits. Deficits are caused by excess spending. As Elon Musk has proved, there isn't millions, there isn't billions, there's trillions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse. It is sitting there, it is all documented, and the Congress doesn't seem to have the courage to do anything about it. To me, this is This is shameful and problematic. When we come back, Ken Khachigian, I think, joins us. And he has been a witness to history. His book, Behind Closed Doors. I gave this book to a bunch of my family members and friends this past Christmas. I recommend it to you. You can get it at ReaganandNixon.com. ReaganandNixon.com. Ken Khachigian will join us. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. Before the break, I was telling you about this amazing new book, relatively new, Behind Closed Doors, In the Room with Reagan and Nixon by Ken Khachigian. Now, Ken Khachigian is, without any question, already goes down in presidential history. He's one of the greatest presidential speechwriters. He worked with both presidents on a number of consequential speeches, but more importantly, he's a strategic thinker, and I think it was Anthony York who nailed it when he said that Ken Khachigian was an architect of Ronald Reagan's 1980 victory. It's because Ken's mind works strategically. He working with others, he elevated George Duke Majan to the governorship of California, and he's written an amazing book. But what I want is his take on politics today, because people don't change and the dynamics remain the same despite the fact that we're in the age of mass communications. Ken, welcome back to the Roger Stone Show.
Hey, Roger, always good to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
So what is your take here? You've got a lot of Republicans the president calls them panicans, although Trump himself has admitted publicly, the president, that if the Democrats take the House, he will face another endless round of fake investigations and impeachments. What they're doing to Tulsi Gabbard is extraordinary. This is the same exact plot line that they use, where two operatives talk to each other. They report it to a third person. That third person becomes the whistleblower. And they classify it as if there's something wrong here. The whole thing is fabricated, exactly what the Vindman brothers did with Eric Ciamella, formerly the CIA, at that point worked for Adam Schiff. But they're going after Tulsi because she has uncovered the Russian collusion hoax. She's working on election integrity, and this scares the daylights out of the deep state. Anyway, Ken Khachigian. Tell me your thinking on 2026. I think, in politics today, a week is a lifetime. And the president is going to have a huge financial advantage because his PACs and the party is extremely well funded. The Democrats have virtually nothing. They're in debt, I believe. And that kind of balances out CNN and MSNBC and ABC, NBC, CBS, and the mass media, because now we get a chance to communicate our ideas our way. The famous Morning in America spots for Ronald Reagan, which Ken Khachigian, I believe, had a hand in, as a perfect example.
Well, there's no question. There's a lot of panic going on in the Republican ranks. So that's the state Senate race down in Texas. Got everybody a little nervous, but you're right. A month is a lifetime in politics. We're a long way from November, Roger. But the Republicans and the president need to get their message together. My concern is that the difficulty that the president and the Republicans have to deal with is not using a stay the course message. That was the problem that we had back in 1982. Now I'm taking people back into history, but those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. And back in 1982, when Ronald Reagan was president, we were defending our congressional majorities, and I was brought in to work on President Reagan's midterm speech that he was going to take on the stump to help our candidates. And I was told, I was a good soldier, and I was told in writing that speech to listen to the pollsters. And I won't name names, but the pollsters said, the message, listen to the polls and watch the polls, and the polls should be stay the course. We're doing the right thing. whatever what we're doing on the economic message is the right thing. And the tendency is to say, we need to protect our record, and we're doing the right thing, and we should stay the course. And that's not the right message, Roger. And I know everything. The tendency is for the president and the Republicans to say, "Look, we've done a lot. We've had a lot of success. The economy's in good shape. Unemployment is low. The stock market's doing great." And the tendency is to say, "Let's defend this and let's stay the course." And if the Democrats take on, they'll disrupt everything. But you've got to realize that the electorate don't. When you're on the ends, the outs tend to see things differently, and people are the disruptors are out there, and they're going to be needling the voters and saying, "Look, things aren't so good, and you're paying a little more for your Netflix, and you're paying a little more in the restaurants, and they'll rub a little iodine in the wounds." And so what the message has to be is, look, we need to restore the great inspiration that brought us into office in the first place. That there's with the Republicans, there's extraordinary hope, there's extraordinary opportunity when you unleash the great the winds of opportunity and capitalism and incentivism and the sources of the low taxes and deregulation that brought us into power, that unleashed the great economy of this great country, and that brought the forces of this America that abroad and at home, that this is a great future that we have ahead of us. And to look to the future, not into the past, not just protect what we had in the past, but to look to the future and then say that if we've got to present a program for the future as well as sustain what we had in the past. And I agree that the president has a great record, and he needs to tout the record, but we can't just lay everything at the feet of Joe Biden and what was wrong and what he did wrong.
Ken, the Republican House, with all due respect, needs to codify some of the president's policies. We're waiting.
That's right, and they can't be defensive about these things. They've got to look forward, and you've got to say, look, if we don't get these policies put into place, what you're gonna have is AOC and Maxine Waters and these lunatics on the left putting in these negative policies into place, and that these great opportunities that we had that we brought into office in 2024 are going to be lost forever. So that the message has to be looking forward and not just delving into the past. And I know that there's this great instinct on the part of the president and some of the Republicans to say to lay everything at the feet of Joe Biden. But you got to be moving forward and look at what's going to happen if you turn this country over to the Democrats. And the lawlessness they put into the streets, the lawlessness they put into the deep state, and what you described of what they're doing with Tulsi Gabbard. So I think there's some messaging issues that have to be looked at.
I agree. I mean, I think to a certain extent, President Trump finds himself in the position Reagan found himself. Reagan campaigned on and then passed a sweeping 3-year tax cut early in his term. The benefits of that tax cut, we went through a rough economic period. It really didn't kind of manifest itself fully until the third year of Reagan's term. And of course, by the fourth year of his first term, the economy was robust. So it is, and Trump has given us the greatest single tax cut in history. Up at that time, Reagan was the all-time champion. Before him, Kennedy. It was, but overall, I think the backdrop for an election is very sound. Inflation is going to be low. If we get a non-political Federal Reserve Board that will finally give us the interest rate cuts that we have based on the inflation rate and the unemployment rate, instead of playing politics with the rate cut, the housing market, which is already experiencing some of the lowest mortgage rates in recent history, is cooking right along. So I think the fundamentals, as they say, are very sound.
That's right. And if things change, it's going to stifle jobs. It's going to stifle opportunity. It's going to stifle growth. And then what the Democrats, they keep saying they want jobs. They want opportunity, but just the opposite will happen, because what they want more regulation. They want more taxes. And if that happens, that's just the opposite of what Americans want.
When they say they want more jobs, they want more government jobs. That's what they are really saying. It is there is no question whatsoever that the high tax policies of both Joe Biden and Jimmy Carter cratered our economy. So it is. I think the financial advantage is also extraordinary. And then I think, from a speech point of view, I think you'll share this. We have more talent in our surrogate lineup. I mean, you have Marco Rubio, you have Tulsi Gabbard, you have Scott Bessent, you have Bobby Kennedy. You have some great public servants here who really understand the president's message. And of course, I think I'm very impressed with J.D. Vance. I think, by definition, as you know, Ken, that's a behind-the-scenes role. You're not supposed to talk about what you do as vice president. You kind of quietly fix problems that the president or someone else helps you work on. But he's been a very effective vice president. He doesn't crow about his accomplishments, because that's, it's a second banana job. He understands that. He's the vice president.
You've touched on something I wanted to talk about, too, is that the administration needs to get its surrogates out there on the campaign trail. Now, Marco Rubio can't do a whole lot because the Secretary of State has to stay nonpartisan.
Yes.
In these midterm elections. But you've overlooked one great asset in this campaign is Brooke Rollins. Now, she is a great asset, and as Secretary of Agriculture, and she, we forget about Flyover America, Roger, in the great Midwest and the Plain States, where there's a huge amount of Republican support, and in these purple vote areas. And Brooke Rollins is a great asset, and I've seen her speak. I've seen her on TV, and she's attractive. She's articulate, and she needs to be out there on our behalf, speaking in those demographic areas where her articulation of the president's policies would be critical, and she's another surrogate. I think we need to be out there on his behalf.
Ken, again, I want to recommend to people your book about your days counseling both Presidents Reagan and Nixon, and your historic role in Reagan's rise and helping Nixon deal with the aftermath of Watergate. Is an extraordinary chance to look inside the process. You kept diaries. This is there are very few political books that I read where I learned something, but I learned a lot in your book. I recommend you go to ReaganandNixon.com is the fastest way you can get this. Ken Kachigian's terrific book, Behind Closed Doors, In the Room with Presidents Reagan and Nixon, by Ken Kachigian. Ken, the man who made George Deukmejian governor. People don't realize he beat a sitting lieutenant governor, Mike Curb, in the Republican primary to then win the general election. You, my friend, are a genius.
Well, thanks a lot, Roger. And one other thing, I think, don't underestimate. I think the president should use the bully pulpit in this campaign as well, in this midterm election. He can articulate his message much more often, getting into that Oval Office and using that television, shaping that message. Where instead of those off-the-cuff White House press conferences, get in that bully pulpit and using it in that Oval Office message as much as he can.
I also think it's important that he meet regular citizens. When he's on the hustings, right, he meets people and he asks them what they think.
Yep.
Where you're in Washington, you're inside the bubble. So I think it has that added value, because then you get some feel for what people think.
Yep, those in the arena, Nixon did that, the in the arena meetings with average citizens and televised them would be great.
That's a great idea. That was Roger Ailes created the meeting in the arena. It was an amazing piece of television. Nixon really harnessed television. Destroyed Nixon's first bid for the presidency, but it made his second one, thanks to his mastering television with Roger Ailes, the legendary founder of Fox. You're listening to the Roger Stone Show. Ken Kachigian's book, once again, at ReaganandNixon.com. Check it out. One of the best political books that I have read. It's been widely acclaimed. Still no review by the Washington Post. That's disgraceful. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You really can't make this stuff up. The Justice Department just released records showing that the federal statement announcing Jeffrey Epstein's death carries a date that appears to precede the day he was found dead inside his New York prison sentence, allegedly death by suicide. Prison records and official accounts show Epstein was discovered and unresponsive on the morning of August 10th, 2019, supposedly when a corrections officer delivering breakfast found him in his cell at the Metropolitan Correction Center in Manhattan, a place you don't want to be. Michael Baden, the very respected longtime New York medical examiner, a man who's done the autopsy in thousands of hanging cases, was asked by Epstein's family to examine the body. He did, and he said that the bones broken in Jeffrey Epstein's neck were not consistent with hanging. And we're supposed to believe that the two people who are charged with watching Epstein via camera, both their cameras are malfunctioning, and we're supposed to believe they fell asleep. And Bill Barr's rush to close this was extraordinary. And it's amazing the way he continues to haunt the news as these emails and pictures come tumbling out, and he's hanging out with Woody Allen and Bill Gates and Steve Bannon. There's Steve Bannon's emails with him, just some strange stuff. He calls Trump stupid. When Epstein offers Steve his home in Palm Beach or his little St. James Island, Bannon answers, "Thank you, my brother." This is a guy who's been convicted of sex crimes in Florida at that point. So I still continue to marvel at the left's attempts to turn nonsense into something. So the files do include an anonymous phone call from a woman who insisted that she had been raped by Donald Trump and others when she was 13. But she doesn't say where or when. She certainly doesn't tell us her name. It's an anonymous complaint. It was investigated and it was found faulty. But the Wall Street Journal serves this up out of context, among others. So this is what they do. Super Bowl Sunday, it's amazing to me that Roger Goodell and the NFL do not understand their market. Why they would have the rap reggaeton singer Bad Bunny sing a man wearing a dress singing in Spanish, someone who's attacked President Trump repeatedly. Do they really think that this kind of fare is popular with the average American football fan? But there's now competition today. It's going to be very interesting because Turning Point USA scheduled their own All-American halftime show with Kid Rock, Brantley Gilbert, Lee Brice, and Gabby Barrett, all artists known for celebrating patriotism, tradition, American values, as opposed to this freak fest that we're going to get at halftime. I'm mystified as to why they think that the American people who are looking for wholesome entertainment are going to be entertained by this. And the halftime show by Turning Point will be seen on TPUSU's YouTube, their X, and their Rumble channels, with additional distributions on Sinclair's broadcast OTT platform, YouTube, TV, Hulu, Sling, and outlets including the Daily Wire, Real America's Voice, NTD, OANN. So the numbers here are going to be fascinating to see who turns in for the alternative halftime show. with the impossibly expensive commercials that everybody will ooh and ah about. I will be, I've had the sauce on the stove since early this morning, Sunday gravy, and we're going to cook up a little rigatoni, and maybe we'll watch a little bit of the game. I'm Roger Stone. Thanks for joining us in the Roger Stone Show. Until we meet again, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
Looking for financial insights you can trust?
How do you protect yourself as an investor? What's the strategy?
I think it's really simple. I think you just want to be diversified in your portfolio.
The Payne family brings real-world experience to every conversation.
Well, I think that's the problem right now is, right, a lot of people that are close to retirement, they're taking so much risks. And if we do get a big sell-off, it could derail their retirement.
Listen to the Payne Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.